So in just a few months, thousands of students will be graduating from various tertiary institutions across the country. And the big question, no doubt, that one asks themselves is, what next?
Yeah, and this morning we're looking at how you can build up your CV, prepare for your interviews and negotiate a salary. Joining us now is industrial psychologist and career coach Phiona Martin. Phiona, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me here.
Phiona, you've graduated and you don't know what to do next. What does that piece of paper mean? Does it mean you're now meant to go out and look for a job, or what happens next?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for most graduates, and particularly if you've invested 3 to 4 years doing a tertiary qualifications, you want to go and look for a job within industry. So the prevalence of graduates to go into corporate or into a job related to what they studied is quite common. Entrepreneurship is also an option, and I know that it's very heavily punted, but it's not necessarily for everyone.
Absolutely. Let's start with, so you're coming out of varsity, you're looking for a job maybe. Do we still even have CVs in 2019? I remember when we were in however long ago, we had CVs. Do people still put together a CV when looking for a job, or is social media now your resume?
Absolutely. So you raise a really good point in that regard. So CVs are still important, and they are still very widely used. In fact, most companies, as part of their screening process, will go through your CV. Social media is almost like an added layer to that. So for me, I would say social media is a way to get you found. So LinkedIn, as you rightfully mentioned, has become, I think it's the most used platform by recruiters to look for job seekers. So if you're a job seeker and you're not on LinkedIn, you're missing out in terms of being found passively by employers on the market. And it's also, I think, one of the platforms where it's appropriate to approach people for professional reasons.
What happens if you've studied to be a doctor for however long years, and then you decide, I don't know if this is for me? What to do in that situation?
Yeah, so I mean, I think so. You have some degrees like, I guess, medicine, pharmacy, where it almost like, streamlines you into a particular role. Whereas some degrees are a little bit more broad. So if you do a BCom, a BA, you've got various options. So what you've mentioned in terms of career switching, it's not uncommon. In fact, I think career switching is going to become more and more common. Historically, if you started in HR, you would sort of, continue along an HR stream. But now we have people who started in HR and then they go to marketing, and somehow they might find themselves in account or brand management. So that's going to become more common because of the way the world of work is changing.
But how do young people actually develop that open opportunity mindset?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think there's a gap, between, so a lot of people graduate and you sort of get thrown into the world of work without a lot of preparation. So it's kind of a sink or swim, and you discover it as you go along. But in essence, I think one of the things that you can do to prepare yourself for the world of work is, a lot of people think that your job search starts sort of, just as you're about to graduate a few months before. Preparing yourself for the world of work starts as early as your first year. And the reason I say that is that your employability, or how you position yourself, depends on what you've been doing through university. So remember, when you graduate, and let's say there's 100 of you in your accounting class, all of you are graduating with an accounting degree. So in essence, that's not the competitive advantage in relation to your peers. So it's over and above your qualifications. What have you done? So what are some of the things that university students can do? So get involved in societies, get involved, within clubs, get involved with volunteer work, do internships. I would strongly encourage university students at least once a year through your holiday, do an internship, do a job shadow, get involved in professional associations. Most professions have an industry body where they do a lot of events, conferencing, you get to be mentored and to network. So whether you're in HR or accounting, they always have a professional body where they allow students to come in, and that also helps as part of your transition.
You crack the interview, you arrive. What do you wear? What do you say? How do you conduct yourself?
Very good question, Duduzile. So with regards to the interview starts the moment you walk onto the premises. People think it's only when you enter the room. How you behave yourself and your deportment, as you're coming through the security gate, as you're in reception, is all part of the interview, because, that behavior can sometimes get back to interviews, particularly if you're maybe rude to the receptionist, maybe you're swearing at someone on the cell phone, those type of things, can work against you, particularly if they get back to hiring managers. And sometimes people that you don't think are important are actually, people who might have influence within that area. So in terms of dressing, I think South Africa is very diverse, and it's industry specific. So know your industry. Some industries are very serious in terms of, the suit, the tie, particularly if you look at your audit, your legal firms. Some are a little bit more relaxed. But I'll say that always err on the side of being formal. So I think, you won't get discriminated against for being too formal. But, if you come and you're too casual in a formal environment, that might look like, you're not sort of taking the interview seriously.
Yeah.
Now, we touched a bit on the issue of CVs earlier on. But just tell us, what are some of the do's and don'ts, especially when creating your CV?
Yeah. So your CV is basically a marketing document because it represents you in your absence to the employer. And one thing I always say, so this is not necessarily a problem for graduates because, they don't really have a lot of experience, but your CV has to be short. I mean, with recruiters, how many CVs would you say they receive per application if you were to take a guess?
100?
Yeah.
Yeah, 150.
Yeah, so in essence, I think the average is about 250 applications.
Sure.
For some, even more. There have been some positions where they have had 1,000 to 2,000 applications. Sure. So you can imagine a recruiter having about hundreds of applications to screen. They're not going to go detail word by word for your CV. So I'll always say the shorter, the better. And if you're a graduate, you should not have more than 2 pages on your CV, in essence. And for me, it must be things that stand out. So your achievements, what have you done? How do you differentiate yourself amongst your peers? So it's a marketing document, and think of it that way. I always say this ad nauseum, but if you look at the time a recruiter, I think the stat is they spend between 7 to 30 seconds looking at a CV maximum in a screening. So if you set a timer to about 30 seconds and have a look at your CV and what you see in that 30 seconds, is it selling you enough? And if not, you probably need to rearrange it.
You are your biggest billboard.
No, yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Do you remember when you went and applied for a job? Your first one.
Just the hassle of developing that CV, going to the internet cafe, typing up
Favorite question,
document.
tell us about yourself. But anyway, that was industrial psychologist and career coach Phiona Martin.